Well, whether some of us, I know, have been here, have been meditating for many years. It's become part of your life, and it's a grace, I think, to wake up one day and realize that meditation has, at some point, just slipped into your life as a discipline, as a gentle but regular discipline, and your life would be diminished. You would have a sense of lacking something if you didn't meditate morning and evening. And that learning that discipline is not just a matter of willpower. It does, like everything, it takes a little bit of will and grit to decide to do it. But it isn't just willpower that makes it happen. It's grace and time and something at a subtle level of our spirit that recognizes this discipline, this practice as life-giving and as a gift of life. So when that happens and you realize that it has just slipped in and become part of your life, I think there's a deep sense of gratitude. Many people say it's like a feeling of coming home and being rooted. Some of you have found that. Some of you perhaps have started to meditate many times, like a person who has no problem giving up smoking because they've done it many times. So you've started to meditate, but then you've you stopped, so the rhythm of your life changed, or you went on holiday, or people came to stay, or you got sick for a while, and the discipline got lost. Or perhaps you got discouraged. Perhaps your initial enthusiasm wore off a little bit, and meditation seemed to be a bit dry and nothing seemed to be happening. For whatever reason, you stopped. And then, maybe a few weeks or months later, you meet somebody who reminds you, or your own memory takes you back to the experience that meditation had given you, and you feel that you would like to start again. And so you start again. And I think for many people, myself included, that's how you get into it. You start, you stop, you start again several times. And then there are, I think, I was told, some people here this weekend who are quite new to meditation. And this may be the first time you've meditated in this way, or that you've even meditated at all, perhaps, I don't know. And we'd like you to feel that you're among friends who are not as crazy as they look, and that we would be able to give you some help in starting to meditate. And those of you in the second category, that you will find a reinforcement of your intention, of your discipline, and you'll feel recharged and eager to start the daily practice again. And those of you who have already found that grace, you will be able to enjoy the opportunity to make the meditation times truly the center, and obviously the center of your day, as we do during the schedule. In fact, I think anybody who does find that rhythm of meditation in their life does understand what it means to say that the times of meditation are the most important times of your day. And that sounds a little fanatical until you see what it means. It means that those times of meditation connect you to the deep source of meaning and immediacy in every moment of the day. Whatever the responsibility you have, whatever the situation you're dealing with, whatever people you're with, whatever and however you may be, you're able to be fully present to it because of those two times of meditation that balance the day, morning and evening. So in a sense it doesn't matter whether you're an old hand at meditation or whether you're a complete novice, because when we meditate, we are always entering into it as if for the first time. We don't carry sort of a lot of baggage, a feeling of success or failure into any meditation period. We try to let go of all baggage and any preconceptions we have about ourselves or about meditation. So, in a sense, we are all beginners here this weekend. We're all learning to meditate. John Main says that meditation is a learning process. We're always learning. And that's what discipline means. It's the way you learn. It comes from the Latin word discere, to learn. So, if you are a disciple, you're learning something from a teacher. If you are practicing a discipline, you are engaging with a learning process. And that's different from a technique. At first, perhaps, when modern people start to meditate in our culture, it's as if we found a new technique and we got to master it. And we master it because we want certain results, certain benefits. And that may be how many people start today. Many people start to meditate on the advice of a physician or of a psychotherapist, because there are certain psychological and physical benefits from meditation which are well proven, well researched. We heard about that this morning from at the conference that we were attending at Baptist Hospital here. Jonathan Campion, of our community from London, psychiatrist, was describing the psychological and physical benefits of meditation. So you want these things, you know you need them, here's a technique to get them, so you practice the technique and you want to do it well. You want to master the technique. Okay, that's maybe how we start. But you will inevitably experience a sense of failure as you try to master the technique of meditation. And the ego is, of course, offended at the experience of failure. Doesn't like to fail. Wants to be the best. Wants to be admired for being the greatest meditator in the group. And you will also perhaps feel, with that sense of failure, a kind of anger very often at the person who taught you to meditate. That's why I suggest we stay in silence. And that is a wonderful moment. That moment where you taste failure in the technique level. That's where we really begin to learn what meditation means, what the journey of meditation is all about. It starts after some experience of failure, and also when we've begun to learn some humility. The ego is not very good at humility. Ego is good at pretending to be humble, but real humility is something that always takes the ego by surprise and undermines the ego and drags the ego down to earth. The word humility comes from the word humus, which means earth. So to be humble is to be earthy, to be earthed, to have your feet on the ground. So this is a very good moment. So anytime you experience a sense of failure in meditation, rejoice. Jump up in your chair and shout, hallelujah. And that's the only way, actually, well, to turn the failure around. Then what happens is of course, you begin to move into the experience of discipline. That the meditation is not just a technique you're going to master and get good grades for, but it's a discipline you are going to follow. It's a path that you're following, and it is a path that puts you into touch with deeper levels of your own self-knowledge. It will bring you to self-acceptance, which is another way of describing humility. And in that experience, you have even more to learn. That's only the next stage. Because through the self-knowledge, the self-acceptance, you then begin to glimpse the knowledge of God. So meditation is going to take you, as it takes us all, on a journey. It isn't so easy for us to learn something new. And the older you are, the more difficult it can be. It's interesting, wonderful, and significant to see how readily children just learn. They just seem to have a gift for learning, don't they? They're learning an incredible amount every day, every moment. And they learn it with wonder, with joy, and they learn through experience directly. They relate to meditation itself directly, not through books, not through talks, but because somebody has, in a few words, told them to meditate, how to meditate with them, and they're off. They just do it. Through their own experience, and therefore their innate wisdom, we know how wise children can be, comes into play. Now, we have to surrender our preconceptions and remove our filters in order to come to anything like this condition of being able to learn, being able to come to a direct experience. Now, children don't have a lot of information. We've got more information. Children haven't accumulated a lot of knowledge. But they do have this capacity for first-hand experience. It's what we call simplicity. They just are simply and directly in touch with their immediate experience. And that's why they are such excellent teachers at this level of experience, and why Jesus takes a child, puts the child in front of his disciples, whom he found it very difficult to teach anything to, because the disciples, as he said, were so dull, found it so difficult to understand what he was saying. So he took a child and said, "This is what you must be like before you can enter into the kingdom of heaven. And unless you become as simple as this child, you won't ever experience what I mean by the kingdom of heaven. You'll always get it wrong. You'll always think it's something else. You'll always be thinking about it. Whereas a child doesn't think about it. A child just knows it, experiences it. In fact, the best way that we can learn from a child is to teach them. To teach them as best we can with our limited understanding, but to teach them, and to teach them while respecting their innate gift for this kind of direct human experience. Because if we don't respect that gift, if we don't recognize, that's why a teacher with children or parent needs to be so reverent in a way, and so blessed in the presence of that state of consciousness. It is such a precious and sacred thing, a fragile thing in a way. but we have so much to learn from it. So this weekend we don't have any children to teach us, but we can try to put ourselves into this condition of simplicity, of directness, direct experience, and it will be, wherever we're starting from this evening, it will be a step, another step in the learning process. Maybe the first step for some of you, maybe a later step for the rest of you. And perhaps it will be a deeper embracing of this discipline, the discipline of being. In meditation, we're not doing anything, really. We're not trying to achieve anything. We're not mastering a technique. The discipline is simply the discipline of being. Being simply who we are in the stillness of the present moment and resting in its profound and enlightening silence. And even that is saying a bit too much, because it creates certain expectations or certain images or certain feelings that I should be feeling this or I should be experiencing that. Now, we'll end this session shortly with a period of meditation, and I'll introduce meditation again to some of you, and maybe the rest of you for the first time. But when we sit down to meditate this evening or tomorrow morning or the rest of the retreat or the days thereafter, we are not trying to make anything happen. We don't have to ask ourselves, what should I be feeling? Or what should be happening? Now those questions may arise, and in one form or another they probably will at the beginning. But just be prepared to recognize the question and then just let it sit there. You don't have to answer it. You may not be able to dismiss the question because the question keeps coming back, keeps nagging. You know, what should be happening? Am I doing this right? I'm not very good at this. I'm very distracted. So those questions or those comments, those evaluations will be probably generated in your mind, and just be aware of them and just take a step back from them. Don't be controlled by them. Don't have your mood or your motivation affected by those questions. And if you can do that, you will have already gone 6 steps ahead, at least on the spiritual journey. Because you will no longer, you'll be freeing yourself from being dominated by your ego. You will begin to have taken a certain detachment from the content of your own mind or feelings. And that's freedom. All discipline that serves our human development must be freely accepted. And I don't think anyone is ever going to tell you, you must meditate. Even in the classroom, where children learn to meditate together, if a child really doesn't want to meditate, we say, well, okay, go to the library, but you find that doesn't happen, actually. Children do like to meditate. They freely choose it. But if otherwise, no one can force you to meditate. And if you choose to start to learn to meditate, you are in fact entering upon this path, this practice with faith. It's a way of faith. And I'll talk more about that, of course, during the talks. St. Paul describes the gospel as a way of salvation that begins in faith and ends in faith. It's an open-ended both ends. It's about faith. And the discipline of meditation proves itself to be faithful and faith strengthening because it is about being free. Any true discipline sets you free. Without that freedom, you can't grow, you can't enjoy, you can't move on. You get stuck. What is the opposite of freedom? Addiction. You get stuck in life-denying or self-destructive patterns. And we live, of course, in a very addictive society, and we sometimes even mistake forms of addiction for freedom. So meditation is in many ways countercultural. And we have to unlearn many things in order to learn the real things. But this discipline of being sets us free from the prison of our egocentric way of seeing and acting, which means that we see everything from the imagined centrality of the ego. We think the ego is the center of the universe, everything revolves around me, everybody has to relate to me, my feelings are the most important thing in the situation. And that egocentric vision of life is, of course, nothing less than a prison. So, any true spiritual discipline, like meditation, will cut your way out of this prison quite quickly. And you may actually say, like some prisoners do, after 20 or 30 years in prison, I'm not sure I want to go out into the world anymore. I've got used to it here. Leave me alone. I can't adjust to the real free world out there. But we can. So the meditation will cut the bonds of fear and addiction that hold us back from the fullness of life. There are stages in this journey, of course, and the best way of describing those stages is for you, for each of us individually, to recognize and identify these stages and see them in our own unique terms. But the tradition, a rich Christian contemplative tradition that describes this journey and many aspects of this journey to us through many great teachers. The Christian tradition puts before us some ways of helping us to identify these stages in our own experience. And I'll draw on some of those ideas, particularly a set of small sculptures on the west portal of Chartres Cathedral in France, which are known as the stages of contemplation. And there are 6 little beautifully carved statues of a woman holding a book, sitting and holding a book. And I'll go through those stages tomorrow a bit more. But the first is she's just sitting there like this, with the book closed. And this is thought to represent sort of the pre-contemplative stage, before she's actually begun to open the book a little. That's the second stage. The first stage is sort of pre-contemplative. And what might that mean? It means perhaps that we're not aware of who we are or where we are. We're not conscious of the need for change. And when our lifestyle or our habits of mind begin to rankle, begin to hurt us, we often deny the need for change. Or we defend our bad habits. Leave me alone. I'm happy as I am. And perhaps at this stage, the effects of our poor lifestyle still haven't made themselves felt painfully enough to push us into an acceptance of the need for change. And what brings us out of this pre-contemplative stage of kind of almost brutish consciousness, kind of not even fully human consciousness? What pushes us out of that and begins the process of awakening? Well, it's grace. It's grace and our own experience of pain within the need for change. And it may be a meeting with someone, maybe a crisis in your life, it may be a breakdown, maybe a great loss, or it might be a great discovery, a great joy, a great enlightening moment, a gift of love. It could be an outward change of circumstances. One way or another, we get a glimpse of what contemplation might mean. It's a level of experience, not of thought. And in fact, what we are actually seeing is the vitality of love. We are surprised by love, maybe in a form that we never expected, at a time we didn't expect it to come, from a direction we were not looking at. So we may not be able to recognize it or formulate it, we may not even want to accept it in that form, because we don't understand it and it doesn't compute easily. But to have had one glimpse of this is enough to change our life. We can't be the same afterwards. We have, in other words, begun to open the book. We've then moved into the second stage. Listen to what great Jesuit theologian Bernard Lonergan says about this experience. He says, religious experience at its root is an experience of an unconditional and unrestricted being in love. Religious experience at its root is experience of an unconditional and unrestricted being in love. But what we are in love with will remain something we have to find out. Now, so it's a slightly different kind of love from meeting someone and falling for them, falling in love romantically, because you know very well who and what you've fallen in love with. But what if you fall in love in a way with something that you don't know what it is? I think we'll be able to have a chance to look at the new pilgrimage video that we've produced for the community. And in one of these interviews, there's one of our English meditators from some years ago was describing how she had learned to meditate at a group led by Father John at his community in London when he was there. She said she'd come to the group. She was a little bit skeptical about meditation and didn't really think it was Christian and wasn't quite sure what it was, all the fuss was about, but anyway she wanted to come and find out, and she was a woman of faith and practice, a religious woman. And she said, he came into the room and she immediately felt his authority, his presence, strength, and he started to speak, and then within a few minutes she said she knew that what he was saying was true, and that she needed to listen. And the message was very simple: how to meditate, and she knew she had to practice it. So she went home and started to meditate. And then she said, everything began to shift. And she began to look at everything, and all her familiar religious furniture, the way she sort of arranged her world of beliefs and her practices and everything in her life. She was an intelligent, active woman. She said everything began to shift. And she went to ask if she could come and see him later on and discuss it with him. And when she spoke with him, she said, I can't really explain what is happening. And you'll see this in the film. She said, but the best way I can describe it is like falling in love. And if you remember the last time you fell in love, everything changes. Everything you see and perceive changes. So he said, well, that's exactly what's happened. You've fallen in love. You've fallen in love with God. So this is what we're doing when we meditate. You can start to meditate because you want to lower your cholesterol, and that might help you to live longer and happier. But at the end of the day, when the final judgment comes, and the final evaluation, a self-evaluation, I think the final judgment means a self-evaluation really. When that final self-evaluation comes, maybe it comes as a process as you get older, you're not going to measure yourself in any kind of material way. You're not going to make sense of your life by how much you've achieved, how much money you've made, how big your house is, and so on. There's going to be one simple, single criterion that evaluates your life for you, and that is love. How have I learned to love? How have I allowed myself to be loved? How have I understood and seen that love is the great power, the great motivating, creative force in all things? It's the most important of all things. And in the Christian contemplative tradition, we see meditation essentially as a way of love or a work of love. And therefore the fruit of meditation that proves to us that this is a meaningful and purposeful discipline to follow is that we become more loving. And we know that we become more loving. And if you haven't become more loving after 20 years, you get your money back.